Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kristen Kastner. I'm the Indicator 14 Post-School Outcomes Data Collection Lead for this year, which is the federal fiscal year 2024 reporting period, and the collection year, of course, is 2025. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson of Crescent Bed Consulting, who's our vendor who will help us with this data collection this year. That's a change from previous years as we had another vendor last time. So we're asking everyone to contact Crescent Bed with any questions going forward. There'll be contact information in this webinar, but I just wanted to point that out as a specific change. In terms of the webinar logistics, the purpose of this webinar is to provide information on the procedures for this year's data collection. There are a few logistics around that as well, and we are going to be recording this webinar for everybody who's on it, just so you know. Once we get everything up and running, we will post the recording to our Indicator 14 website so that people can refer back to it if they need to, or people that are not able to make the webinar today can indeed get the information they need. The slides are already posted on our resources section of our Indicator 14 webpage, so feel free to go ahead and follow along with that as well. There will be a Q&A session at the end of this webinar that we are not going to record for privacy reasons. We welcome anyone throughout the session to go ahead and put their questions into the Q&A using the Q&A button here on Zoom. That way we can answer questions for as many people as possible. Right now, we're scheduled for an hour and a half. I don't know if we're going to need all of that time, but we wanted to make sure that we allowed as many questions and provided as many answers as possible. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and kick off the presentation. So again, just the agenda for today's meeting, a quick overview of the Indicator 14, which is probably old hat for a lot of you, but there are a lot of new special education directors this year. We want to make sure that we cover the basic information on what Indicator 14 is, why we collect this information, and really how districts can use this information. We really don't see this as just an idle data collection exercise. We want to be able to collect this information so that districts can really use it to improve their special education systems. And just also in a climate right now where we're all worried about funding, being able to justify the funding that you do have or that you will be getting next year based on the outcomes that your kids are experiencing. I think that is overlooked way too much in the current systems, and we want to be able to give you the tools that you need to get your work done, because we know that it is really vital work. So after the overview, we'll do a quick sort of how to prepare for the administration of the survey. We know this is not just a one-off thing for a lot of you, so we try to give a little bit of tips and tricks and how to go about all of these things. And then how to administer the survey. Now, because it is an online survey, we try to make that easier so you can send out the links for the surveys to make it as easy as possible for districts to implement all of this work. So we just wanted to make sure that we've got all that straight as well. Then again, a few reminders, little tips and tricks, and then a quick wrap up, which will include that Q&A I mentioned earlier. So first updates for this year of communications updates. We send out all of our communications on Indicator 14 on Indicator 14 through MailChimp, which is the way new DESE communicates, sends things out to their special education directors, among other people. We send that out based on the role that is on our school and district profiles webpage. So I know it's the time of season when there are a lot of new people coming in to districts in a lot of different roles. Please make sure that those profiles pages are up to date so that we can make sure we're getting the right people, the right information. Then Indicator 14 resources. This is what I keep referring to when I talk about the web pages. That is the web page. It's been updated from last year. We had to spell out special education for the new format for the DESE website. So it's the same page, but just at a slightly different URL. And then we also talk about a lot about the Dropbox. So because a lot of the information we're sharing back and forth in terms of data is is PII. It's personal information for students and personally identifiable information for students. We do a lot of our conversations through the Dropbox because that is a security portal. It is secured, a secured place, and the information that we share with our vendor also goes through that Dropbox. We ask that people don't email information specifically on students because it really isn't secure to send those kind of things via email. But that is the pathway for the Indicator 14 Dropbox. I want to also note that it is not inside the SPP APR Dropbox. It is a separate mailbox for Indicator 14. And I say that because I hear back from a lot of people who are looking for their information and can't find it in the Dropbox. So again, promised you an overview of Indicator 14. Here we go. Basically, really what it's about and why we do this. So again, why is this work important? I started to say a little bit of that earlier. So the reason why we're all here is to prepare students for success in their adult lives. The Indicator 14 survey is supposed to give us data that we can really use to find out really how we're doing for our kids and how the kids are doing once they leave high school. So the information gives us the indication of our success and our educational efforts at the state and the local level. So what is Indicator 14? It is Indicator 14, the full title is Indicator 14 Post-School Outcomes. So we measure how many students who had IEPs while they were in high school within 1 year of leaving high school, that's secondary school, how many are enrolled in higher education, how many are competitively employed, how many are in some other post-secondary education or a training program, or how many are in some other employment. It's really that simple. So as a reminder, we used to collect this information by cohort, meaning only certain districts had to provide this information every year. We have moved to a census model, so we're doing every district every year. So every district needs to engage in reaching out to their exiters from the previous year and engage them in answering this survey if at all possible. So again, how are the Indicator 14 data collected? It is done through an online survey, which is accessible in English, Spanish, Haitian Creole, Cape Verdean Creole, Vietnamese, and Chinese or Portuguese. And so the survey is equipped for that. You could send out the links, or we also have printed versions of the survey in case you want to do it that way. So the student can fill in the survey themselves. The district staff can complete the online survey while they're on the phone or sitting in front of a former student. Or this year, a parent, guardian, or caregiver can complete the survey with or on behalf of the former student who left high school about 1 year ago. That's a key point. We want to give you as many ways as possible to collect this data. Now this year, I know we're getting started a little bit late. Usually we do it earlier in the year, but we're opening the data collection today, and we're closing it on Monday, September 22nd, 2025. That gives a little about 2 months for districts to reach out to the previous year's exiters and to collect the information that they're willing to provide. Please ensure that all the surveys are completed and is submitted online by September 22nd, because we have to meet our federal reporting requirements as a state, and that really affects our timelines. Another date you'll see on this might be September 12th, which is the day that we suggest if you send out paper surveys to your exiters from the previous year. We put the deadline on getting that back to the districts as September 12th, just so that you guys have, that gives you 10 days to put the information into the survey, because all the data is collected via the survey. Now I'm going to hand this over to my dear colleague, Rachel Wilkinson, because so again, she is from Crescent Bend Consulting, who is the vendor that the State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has engaged to help us with this data collection this year. And she can tell you a little bit about how to prepare and what to do.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kristen. I really appreciate it. I saw a hand is raised. I don't know if we want to wait till the end or if you want, I just didn't want to ignore it and move on if you all, however you want to handle that.
Well, what we had said originally at the beginning would be go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A on your screen. Use the Zoom button, and we will answer all questions at the end of the the session today.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Just wanted to let everyone know I saw the hands. We're on it. We will help you as we get towards the end. So it's a pleasure meeting you all. My name is Rachel Wilkinson, as Kristen shared, and I'm going to walk you through some of the next 4 key agenda items related to that Indicator 14 survey. So our next item is really how to prepare for that online survey. So the first thing you're going to want to do as a district is identify who your survey team is going to be and think about how you're going to train them and orient them to this process. And that might include you doing some legwork on the front end or giving resources about the Indicator 14 survey by using that Indicator 14 website that Kristen shared earlier, the new link. It has a lot of great resources, information about the survey, data from the survey, effective strategies for implementing the survey, a script to help you talk through, if your staff need it, through the survey with students so you can complete it together. So I really encourage you all to access that link because it does have a wealth of information. But there are some key things to think about when we want to collect data effectively. So for this survey, there are some things we want to know. So first, what is an exiter? And then who are your district's exiters and how are you going to contact them? And then ultimately, how will you administer the survey and submit the data? So we're going to talk through that a little bit and first touch on what is an exiter, because it's a strange term. But when we use the term exiter, what we're talking about are students with IEPs who exited in the prior year. So for this reporting cycle, we're going to be talking about students with IEPs who during the 23-24 school year either graduated from high school, they aged out of special education, they reached the maximum age, sometimes you hear that term, and that's with or without a certificate of attainment. Or these are students who exited by dropping out of high school, and that means they didn't return for the 24-25 school year, even though they'd been expected to return. And the exiters also include students who were in out-of-district placements, so that's a key piece to keep in mind as well. So who are your district's exiters? So DESE has actually provided you, as Kristen shared earlier, with a list of your exiters that was generated based on data you all submitted in SIMS in 2024. So each of those lists is now in the DESE secure portal in Dropbox Central. So once you're logged in, you can go to that section, get to the Indicator 14 data. Again, it's its own separate area. It's not under SPP APR. And then you can download and save your district's SIMS exiter files securely on your system so that you can track that information. You also want to make sure you're confirming your exiter list. So when you go and get it from Dropbox, you want to use your records and that Indicator 14 student contact information sheet, it's a mouthful, that your district completed last year. And you want to carefully review that list to make sure everything is accurate and correct. But of course, that's not always going to be that the perfect does not always happen. That's not always going to be the case. So if there are discrepancies, we want to help you accommodate for those. And to do that, we're asking that you would create an Excel spreadsheet where you can list your district name and your organization code, as well as the SACID, the student ID number, the name of that student and their date of birth for every record where you have discrepancies. So that discrepancy might be that a student is included who shouldn't have been, that student information has changed, or maybe a student isn't on the list who should have been. So in this document you're creating that you can send to us, you can indicate whether you're adding a student to the official list of exiters or removing them. We also ask that you give us a reason, because that's information that's valuable for DESE as well as us as we prepare the data for federal reporting, to know why a student might be added or removed. And then finally, once you've put together the spreadsheet, if you can upload it back into your Indicator 14 Dropbox location and notify us, and I've got our information in the next bullet of who to notify, and you do that through the DESE secure portal, that ensures that PII is protected, as Kristen mentioned. It also ensures when you notify us that we can go get that information and correct it on our end so that students are added or removed as appropriate. So we have a Crescent Bend Consulting, or CBC, it's a little easier to say, team member, Area 11, who's fantastic, and she is going to be working with you all related to these requests to update or change that list, as well as give you notifications of when information and what information is coming from the system. And I want to let Ariel for a moment come off mute and off, or on rather, camera and introduce herself.
Thank you, Rachel. My name is Ariel Levin. I'm excited to provide you support as you work with your Exeters to complete the survey this year. So I'll be reaching out to you periodically throughout the data collection period with reminders, updates, information regarding Exeter survey completion statuses. And I will also be your primary point of contact for any questions, concerns, or issues that you may have about the survey along the way. So as you do confirm your Exeter list, as Rachel mentioned, please reach out to me with any issues that you see, and I'll go ahead and include my contact information in the chat so that it's easily accessible. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Ariel. Ariel's fantastic, so do feel free to reach out at any time if you need support as you're going through this process. All right. So compiling Exeter's contact information. So once all of those Exeters have been identified from that list, you've added or removed them as appropriate, then what you're going to want to do internally is use those student contact information forms that should have been completed by this group of Exeters that we're reporting on this year in spring of 2024. That's going to give you the contact information to allow you to reach out to these students. And if you don't have these forms for particular Exeters, you don't need to worry. You can look at their emergency contact forms from when they were enrolled, or other information that might be in their cumulative records, even if maybe that's getting family information to see if you can get the student's information, or see what the best process would be to get a survey completed for students who maybe you don't have those forms for. Right, we're going to move now to item number 3 on our agenda. So this is actually the administration of the online survey. And planning is always key for things to be successful. So we encourage you to contact your Exeters and have a plan to do so, so that all surveys are completed online at the active link that we currently have. And that is due by September 22nd, 2025. That's a Monday. And the plan should include how you want to reach out to students, whether it's through email, phone calls, mail, social media. Now I'm going to add an asterisk with the social media piece. There may be modes, ways that you reach out through social media that may be through private correspondence. You do not want to publicly post this link online through a big social media process, because then that opens the survey up to anyone. Anyone who gets the link can complete the survey, and you certainly don't want that affecting your data by any means. And we do need to know the details of the students who are completing the survey, or rather the former students, now Exeters, so that we can tie it to their demographics information. So a link going out that gets, 100 responses, which we can't tie to any specific person, can make the data messy. So you just want to account for that by not using social media to post the links. Other content, other things you want to. Yep.
Sorry, just want to step in. The best way I've seen it, the districts are using that when we say social media, is they put a call out for anyone who was on an IEP who left school last year, and then invite them to contact the district to get the link for the survey. If that helps, it helps clarify exactly what the district should be doing with that survey.
That's great. Thank you so much for that example, Kristen. All right. So perfect. So that's a plan, is some of those methods of contact. You also want to think about how often you're going to contact Exeters. We're going to go into that in a little more detail through our next few slides, but that is an important piece to consider because sometimes it's hard to get a hold of someone right away. And then you also want to identify the district staff you're going to use to reach out to your Exeters. And one key piece to think about, and this is what we've known from working with federal data, as the state has experienced as well, typically response rates for districts are higher if the Exeters are actually contacted by staff they know and trust. So staff that they have some sort of relationship with, that maybe they knew while they were in school. The students tend to be more inclined to respond and provide information to those people that they have an existing relationship with. And the response rates are important. We're going to talk about those a lot as well. And the reason is because this is a piece of your LEA determinations process, is that response rate to the survey. So this is a priority area for DESE as well as the federal government to ensure that the data that's being received is inclusive of your total population. When there's low response rates, it's hard to make general conclusions about the data because it's only limited to a select group of people, of Exeters, of students. So increasing those response rates is really important for the quality of the data as well as for your determination process. We want to also ensure that every survey that gets completed counts. And to do that, we need to have some details about the students so that we can tie their information to the SIMS data that you previously submitted so that we can report it all accurately. So if you do have district staff who are going to be completing the survey on behalf of the student alongside the student, whether that's on phone, on Zoom, on Teams, however you might do that, or in person, you want to remind district staff, if they are the ones actually entering information into the survey, to select the option early on in the survey, I work for the district. And then those staff members will need to enter their name and role. And that, again, just helps you have a better understanding of where the information's coming from. We'll have this information that then we can share as you need it. But this, again, is a way to ensure that we're getting the information in a way that we can collect and report on. And we also ask that if district staff are completing the survey, mind you, this question will not be asked of students. This is only when district staff have been elected to complete the survey, to enter the former student's SACID. So you should have that information available to you. If you don't, then you won't be able to complete this field, and that's all right. But we are asking that if you can get that information, that is incredibly helpful for us to connect that student data again to the demographics information. All right, so planning your outreach. The procedure that you ultimately use is really up to your discretion and your district's discretion. But what we do suggest is that you contact through mail or email your Exeters shortly before you plan to start calling them, so that you can give them time to complete the survey online if that's how they choose to do so. And that can kind of make the pool a little bit smaller of who you need to call if you're notifying them of the survey in advance and some decide to complete it independently. Then there's less students and Exeters that you might need to follow back up with after the fact. And then do consider sending a follow-up letter about a week or two after you send that initial point of contact to encourage completing the survey online, especially for those you haven't heard back from. And then if more than a month has gone since your initial mailing or notification, then consider sending additional reminders that staff will be trying to contact the Exeters soon, just so that the Exeters are aware someone will be in contact with them, and getting a strange phone number or a phone number from their previous school wouldn't be a surprise. It's something that they could expect based on your prior communications. We also ask that you at least attempt 3 calls to reach your Exeters. And so contact attempts could be phone calls, emails, letters, texts. Another thing to keep in mind is that if you are calling your Exeters, that you try to call them on different days of the week and different times of day. If you're not reaching a student on every Wednesday that you call at 3, then maybe Wednesdays are a bad day, maybe 3 p.m. is a bad time. So try some other days and times to hopefully increase that response rate. And what we do know is that districts who have higher response rates, they tend to attempt outreach to Exeters more than that 3-time limit that we recommend. So it's certainly not a cap. You may need to reach out multiple times, but at least 3 times is the suggested level of attempts. So how do you know when students have completed the survey? So our CBC staff, Ariel, will be sending regular emails to your Indicator 14 district contact, which is usually going to be the special education administrator, and they'll let you know which Exeters have completed the survey. Now, if you want someone other than your special education administrator to send and receive these updates, then just email the correct contact information to Ariel, and you can copy IDEA data at mass.gov. And this will allow us to update our contact sheet, our district contact sheet rather, so that the right person is getting the information. So just let us know if there's a change in who the designee should be for this contact. All right, we will also be emailing updates to each district starting weekly in early August. So every week you will get a notification of the status of survey completion, who has completed the survey, all of those details. And again, that will start on a weekly basis in early August. And you'll just let Ariel know as a point of contact if you need additional information about who has completed surveys or if you have other questions. So the emails might be a little more high level. Here's the % have completed. If you need more details that might have PII, then just notify Ariel and she will get that information to you through a secure Dropbox link. And that will be the way in which we'll convey student-specific information that we need to protect. All right. Getting towards the end, item 4, just a few reminders. So something that does come up a lot, especially for people who are only doing this once a year or who may be new to doing this, the term competitive employment can be very confusing. But there are some critical characteristics we want to highlight so that you understand when you see that language in the survey or your Exeter sees it in the survey. We want to make sure everyone's on the same page as to what competitive employment means. So competitive employment means youth have worked for pay that's at or above the minimum wage and not less than the customary wage. And they are getting the same level of benefits that the employer provides for the same or similar work that's performed by individuals who do not have disabilities or were not identified with a disability in school. These are also students who are in a competitive labor market on a full-time or part-time basis, and that work in settings with others who are not disabled, so sometimes referred to as an integrated setting. And this also includes military employment. So those are some key characteristics to keep in mind when we talk about the term competitive employment. And I'd mentioned the importance of response rates. We have dedicated some slides to cover that importance. So there are a lot of benefits, of course, to increasing response rates. Some of them include that the understanding of experience of all the former students requires hearing from those diverse types of students. And the more that we hear from, the more that we can have confidence in the data that we're getting. That gives us a more accurate picture of how students who left high school, who had a disability at the time that they left and an IEP in place, how many of them are actually engaging in some way, whether that's through school, through their work, whatever that might be for that student. That will also get your statewide report and district reports more complete. When you have higher response rates, you'll have a more accurate picture of your population. And then that means you can make better decisions about students, about what the data is telling you. If you're limited to 1 or 2 respondents, it's hard to draw broad conclusions about what students are doing upon exiting high school. Whereas if you have a much broader collection of students, that can give you a more accurate picture of what's working, what's not working, where you can provide more support. So it's very helpful for all those reasons. We also recommend that to improve those response rates, you use the interviewers whom former students know and trust. I know I've mentioned that before, and I promise I will be mentioning it again, but it is really important to know that relationship piece does substantially increase response rates. And we also recommend that you have information during these conversations with students, particularly if you have staff who are working alongside them to complete the survey, that have local resources available. So maybe this is information you can give to former students to connect them to programs or services in the community that maybe will help them with attaining goals that they've shared during the call. Because sharing this information really improves not just the reputation of the district, but the reputation of the survey. It also just encourages exiters to be more engaged and involved and work towards the goals that they've set for themselves. So on the whole, having this information available kind of benefits everyone. You also will want to consider publicizing the survey effort. So Kristen gave a fantastic example of what that might look like, sharing through some sort of broad platform that you will be having a survey and that people should be aware of it coming up. And if you were an exiter in the 23-24 school year, you may be getting contacted in some way by the district. So sharing that broadly so that, again, there isn't this sort of surprise, but more an expectation something is coming, can be really helpful. You'll also want to make plans to provide things like assistive technology, translations, or even other supports that would ensure exiters can participate in the survey, even if they have diverse needs. The translation piece, as Kristen mentioned, the survey has been translated into many languages. There's paper copies as well as online. You can select when you click on that survey link. There will be a list to begin the survey of the language you want the survey in. So there is that flexibility there as well to use the online survey as well as the hard copy if you need translated documents. And then again, plan strategically for the times staff are going to reach students and revise those times based on how successfully you're reaching your former students. So times, days might need to be adjusted. The frequency with which you reach out might need to be adjusted based on what your data and the responses you're getting are telling you. All right, and then some evidence-based practices to improve response rates. So there's a lot on this list. I'm going to try to just distill it and summarize the information broadly. So for me, the evidence-based practice that's really important is proactively planning for the survey. So that means thinking even beyond just this survey cycle, but looking at your seniors this year. Think about how you're going to get contact information through that student contact information sheet for your current seniors. And you want to explain to them why it's important, why it's being collected, what its value is. And that might include talking with families of students as well, because in some cases, families might be the point of contact for the Indicator 14 survey. And students may have relationships with particular staff, so that would be great to get at this time when they're seniors and they're still in school, to see, is it a maybe case manager or a counselor who they have a relationship with, who would be someone they'd be more receptive to respond to after they exit school. And then also it's important for districts to have processes in place to plan for the collection of the survey. So I know I've said this kind of ad nauseum at this point, but developing processes for getting student contact information, tracking the responses, the contact attempts, when you've reached out, how you've reached out, all of that information, tracking it internally for this year could be really helpful for you and your team to know where things stand and how you might want to improve things in the future. And the consistency in the reach out really is important to improve the response rate. So you want to ensure that you're reaching out multiple times if you don't get initial responses, that you're diversifying those points of contact, all of that information. And some things we have seen as staff to get buy-in on the work within districts have considered options at the district level to provide stipends for staff that are responsible for getting survey responses. So if that is something that might be beneficial, like a carrot of sorts to encourage response rates, there are different ways you can think about doing that internally. But I think above all else, the last bullet in the far right column is the key piece here. Persistence really is key. Survey responses can be challenging to get, and it might require some dedicated efforts to constantly reach out in diverse ways to get that engagement and those responses. All right. Well, we're almost at the end here. Just our last item is wrapping up. So who should districts contact for Indicator 14 assistance? So for questions about the online survey, and that means accessing it or finding out what exiters have been completing the survey, if any, that's Ariel. You'll want to reach out to her. She is your point of contact for that information. And just know she does have the clearance to discuss individual exiter information with school staff. So if you want that detailed information, she can offer the more detailed information about who actually has responded. Now, for all other Indicator 14 questions that go beyond the survey, maybe about the indicator as a whole, Kristen would be your great point of contact, and I've provided both email addresses you can use to get in contact with her. So thank you for your time. And of course, we're not done. We're certainly going to address your questions and answers you might have. But I think at this point, we'll pause our recording so that we can dig into some of the messages that have come in.